Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
Hi, I'm Jerry, 34, a software engineer from Boston who grew up walking on eggshells around my controlling family. When my phone buzzed with that text from Mom, I felt my stomach drop despite having financially supported them since Dad died. "We've agreed you're no longer part of the family. Don't come to any gatherings," it read, with my sister Natalie immediately liking the message. They had no idea what would happen next. Before I tell you how I stood up for myself after years of being used, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to see what happened by 12:10 a.m. That night. Growing up in our modest colonial house in a middle-class neighborhood outside Boston, Massachusetts, life seemed normal on the surface. We weren't wealthy, but we had enough until everything changed when I was 16. Dad's sudden heart attack left our family without its main provider, and the financial security we'd taken for granted vanished overnight. Mom Margaret, to her friends, though she preferred Mrs. Thompson, in formal settings, had been a part-time receptionist at a local dental office. Her income wasn't nearly enough to maintain our lifestyle, but appearances meant everything to her. Rather than downsizing or adjusting to our new financial reality, she became obsessed with keeping up the facade that nothing had changed. My sister Natalie, younger than me by 4 years, had always been the apple of my parents' eyes. Where I was quiet and studious, she was outgoing and charming. Dad used to call her his little princess, and after his death, Mom channeled all her attention and resources toward ensuring Natalie wouldn't feel the financial strain of our new circumstances. I'd always had a knack for computers. While other kids played video games, I was figuring out how they worked. By 14, I was building websites for local businesses. After Dad died, my hobby became our lifeline. I started taking on more clients, working late into the night after finishing homework. When I got accepted to MIT on a partial scholarship, I felt a mix of pride and anxiety. The scholarship covered tuition but not living expenses. I took on 3 part-time jobs, campus tech support, weekend shifts at a computer repair shop, and freelance coding projects. Every extra dollar I earned went home to Mom and Natalie. After graduation, I landed a job at Tech Future, a growing software company in Boston. My starting salary was more than Mom had ever earned, and I felt an immediate responsibility to step up as the man of the house, though I had my own apartment near work. Within weeks of starting my job, I had set up automatic payments for Mom's mortgage, utilities, car payment, and a generous monthly allowance deposited directly into her account. When Natalie decided on Northeastern University, I covered her tuition, room and board, textbooks, and spending money without hesitation. The family dynamics shifted subtly, but significantly. Mom's requests for financial help became expectations, and eventually demands. Natalie never acknowledged the sacrifices I made for her education, treating her all-expenses-paid college experience as her birthright rather than a privilege. Every month, nearly 60% of my income flowed to my mother and sister. I lived frugally in a small one-bedroom apartment, drove a used car, and rarely took vacations. Meanwhile, Mom renovated her kitchen, and Natalie studied abroad in Paris for a semester, all on my dime. Family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable. Thanksgiving dinners or birthday celebrations at Mom's house. The house I was paying for often included conversations about Natalie's accomplishments or Mom's social activities, with barely a question about my life or work. I was valued for the stability I provided, not for who I was as a person. "We're thinking of updating the backyard this spring," Mom would announce over dinner, looking at me expectantly. The landscaper gave me a quote. "I'll email it to you," she'd add, as if my agreement was a foregone conclusion. Natalie was no better. "Jerry will take care of it," became her standard response to any financial question. Through it all, I told myself, this was what family meant, supporting each other unconditionally. I convinced myself that eventually my financial contributions would translate into the love and respect I craved. Maybe if I just gave a little more, helped a little more often, they would finally see me. My best friend Mike saw through it all. We'd been friends since college, and he didn't mince words about my situation. "They're using you, man," he told me bluntly after I canceled our weekend hiking plans because Mom needed me to fix her computer. "You're not a son or a brother to them, you're an ATM with legs." I defended them reflexively. "They're family, Mike. Dad would have wanted me to take care of them. Take care of them, sure, he agreed. But this is different. They're taking advantage, and you deserve better. I brushed off his concerns, but his words lingered in my mind, planting a seed of doubt that would eventually grow into clarity. The day I met Allison Reeves changed the trajectory of my life, though I didn't realize it at the time. It was a rainy Tuesday morning at Cornerstone Coffee, the shop near my office where I stopped for my daily dose of caffeine before work. The line was longer than usual due to the weather, and as I waited impatiently, checking emails on my phone, someone bumped into me from behind, causing me to spill my just-purchased coffee all over my shirt. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," a voice exclaimed. I turned to see a woman with auburn hair and concerned green eyes holding an overstuffed bag that had clearly been the culprit in our collision. "It's fine," I said automatically, though my shirt was soaked and uncomfortably hot against my skin. "No, it's not," she insisted, already grabbing napkins from the counter. "Here, let me buy you another one. What were you drinking?" Despite my protests, she replaced my coffee and introduced herself as Allison, a psychologist with a private practice a few blocks away. What should have been a 5-minute coffee stop turned into a 45-minute conversation, making us both late for our first appointments of the day. There was something refreshingly direct about Allison. She asked questions and actually listened to the answers. When she gave me her number, suggesting we continue our conversation over dinner, I felt a flutter of excitement I hadn't experienced in years. Our first date led to a second, then a third. Allison was thoughtful, intelligent, and genuinely interested in my life. For the first time, I found myself opening up about my family situation without downplaying the strain it put on me. "So you're telling me you pay your mother's mortgage, all her utilities, your sister's college tuition, and give them both spending money each month?" she asked during our fourth date. Her fork paused midway to her mouth. When I nodded, she set her fork down. "And what do they do for you in return?" The question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that before. "Their family," I said automatically, repeating the justification I'd given myself for years. "That's not what I asked," Allison replied gently. "Family supports each other, yes, but that support should go both ways. It sounds very one-sided from what you've told me." I changed the subject quickly, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation, but Allison had planted a thought I couldn't shake. What did I receive from my family besides stress and financial drain? As our relationship deepened, more cracks in my family dynamic became visible through Allison's perspective. She noticed how often my phone rang with emergencies that always seemed to require my immediate attention and usually resulted in some form of financial outlay. "Your mother called you 6 times during dinner last week because she couldn't figure out how to use her new iPad, the one you bought her," Allison pointed out. "That's not normal, Jerry." I had missed 3 dates with Allison due to family emergencies in the 2 months we'd been dating. The latest was particularly telling Mom's car had a flat tire, and despite having roadside assistance, which I paid for, she insisted only I could help her. The situation came to a head when I missed dinner with Allison's parents, a meeting that had been planned for weeks. Mom had called in tears, claiming the roof was leaking and water was pouring in everywhere. I rushed over to find a minor drip in an unused guest room, something that could have easily waited until the next day. When I finally made it to the restaurant, Allison and her parents had finished dinner and were paying the bill. The disappointment in her eyes cut deep. Later that night, in her apartment, Allison delivered what amounted to an ultimatum. "I care about you, Jerry. I think what we have could be really special," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "But I can't compete with your family's constant demands. They call, and you come running every single time. I need to know if there's room in your life for a real partnership." "Of course there is," I protested. "My family situation is complicated." "It's not complicated," she countered. "It's unhealthy. They're taking advantage of your generosity and guilt, and you're letting them. Until you set some boundaries, nothing will change." Allison's words cut through years of justifications and excuses. She introduced me to concepts like financial abuse and emotional manipulation, terms I'd never applied to my own situation before. "I'm a psychologist, Jerry. I see these patterns in my practice all the time. The difference is, my clients come to me wanting to break free from these dynamics, not perpetuate them." I started making small changes. I declined some of Mom's more outrageous requests. I told Natalie I couldn't increase her monthly allowance just because she wanted to move to a fancier apartment. The pushback was immediate and fierce. Mom's guilt trips intensified. "After all I've sacrificed for you," became her mantra. Natalie's approach was more direct. "Why are you being so selfish? It's not like you can't afford it." The tension reached a breaking point when Natalie announced her engagement to Ryan, a business major she'd been dating for less than a year. The wedding she described was extravagant, a destination affair at a luxury resort with 200 guests. When the conversation inevitably turned to finances, the assumption that I would foot the bill was clear. "I've set a budget," I told her firmly. "I can contribute $15,000 toward your wedding. Anything beyond that is your responsibility." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom looked at me as if I'd suggested canceling Christmas. Natalie's face flushed with anger. "15,000? That barely covers the venue," she exclaimed. "This is my wedding, Jerry. Don't you want me to have the perfect day?" "Of course I do," I replied, maintaining my composure. "But there's a difference between a nice wedding and an extravagant one, and I've made my decision." The conversation devolved from there, with accusations of selfishness and lack of family loyalty. I left their house that evening with a mixture of guilt and an unfamiliar feeling that took me a while to identify: pride. For the first time, I had stood my ground. Our family had a tradition of spending a week at Cape Cod each summer. After Dad died, I took over booking and paying for the annual trip. It was modest by vacation standards, a rental cottage near the beach, home-cooked meals, and simple pleasures like building sandcastles and collecting shells. Despite the dysfunctional family dynamics, I cherished these weeks as connections to happier times. In early March, I received a notification from my credit card company about a substantial charge from Paradise Resorts, Hawaii. Confused, I logged into my account to find a $22,000 charge for accommodations at an exclusive oceanfront property in Maui. I immediately called Mom, assuming my card had somehow been compromised. "Oh, that," she said casually when I described the charge. "Natalie and I decided we deserved something special this year. Cape Cod is getting so boring, and Hawaii has always been on my bucket list." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "You used my credit card to book a vacation without asking me?" "Don't be dramatic, Jerry," Mom replied, her tone dismissive. "We use your card for everything. This is just this year's vacation. Ryan's coming too, of course, and we got you your own room so you can bring Allison if you want." The casual way she mentioned spending over $20,000 of my money without consultation left me speechless. When I finally found my voice, I was surprised by my own firmness. "I'm disputing the charge," I told her. "This wasn't authorized, and it's not happening." "You can't do that!" Mom's voice rose with indignation. "We've already told everyone about the trip. Natalie's already bought new swimsuits and resort wear. You're going to embarrass us over a few dollars?" "$22,000 isn't a few dollars," I countered. "I'm willing to pay for our usual Cape Cod trip. Anything beyond that is your responsibility." I hung up feeling shaky but resolved. Within minutes, my phone exploded with texts from Natalie. "How dare you ruin this for Mom? After everything she's done for you, I've already posted about Hawaii on Instagram. Everyone knows we're going. Ryan took time off work already. Do you know how hard that was to arrange?" The barrage continued through the evening, escalating in tone and accusations. By morning, the family mobilization had begun. Aunt Susan, Mom's older sister, called to express her disappointment in me. "Your mother has sacrificed everything for you kids," she lectured. "The least you can do is give her this one special trip. She's not getting any younger, you know." Cousin Thomas, always quick to jump into family drama, sent a series of texts. "Way to be the family disappointment again. Must be nice to have money and be so selfish with it. Your dad would be ashamed of how you're treating your mom." That last one stung, but it also clarified something for me. Dad had been generous but also financially responsible. He would never have approved of unauthorized spending of this magnitude, regardless of who it was for. Mom's campaign expanded, reaching out to every relative and family friend who might have influence over me. Some, like Uncle Robert, saw through the manipulation and quietly reached out to offer support. Others became unwitting weapons in her arsenal of guilt. Through it all, Allison was my rock. "They're escalating because you're changing the rules," she explained. "They've relied on your guilt working every time, and now that it's not, they're pulling out all the stops." The situation reached a fever pitch when Mom called during a dinner date with Allison. "If you don't uncancel Hawaii, I'll have no choice but to tell everyone the truth about what kind of son you really are, she threatened, her voice cold. What truth is that, Mom? I asked wearily. That you abandoned your family when we needed you most. That you care more about your girlfriend than your own flesh and blood. That you're selfish and cruel. I took a deep breath, conscious of Allison watching me with concern. I've paid your mortgage for 8 years, I said quietly. I've covered every utility bill, car payment, and unexpected expense. I put Natalie through college without her having to take a single student loan. I've given and given until there's almost nothing left for me. If that's your definition of abandonment, then we have very different dictionaries. Is that Allison filling your head with these ideas? Mom demanded. She's turning you against your family. No, Mom. You're doing that all by yourself. I ended the call and sat in silence, my dinner forgotten. Allison reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, she said simply. The Hawaii trip was ultimately canceled, though not without consequences. Mom refused to consider the Cape Cod alternative I offered, declaring that if they couldn't have Hawaii, they wouldn't take any vacation at all. The blame for ruining summer fell squarely on my shoulders. But something had shifted inside me. With each accusation, with each attempt at manipulation, the guilt that had driven me for years diminished slightly. In its place grew something unfamiliar but necessary: self-respect. My 35th birthday fell on a Friday, and for the first time in my adult life, I had made plans that were entirely about what I wanted. Allison had arranged a weekend getaway to a small coastal town in Maine, with reservations at an inn known for its spectacular ocean views and farm-to-table restaurant. We planned to hike, explore local galleries, and simply enjoy each other's company without interruptions. We were packing the car when my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen, and I hesitated before answering. Our relationship had been strained since the Hawaii incident, with communication limited to terse texts and occasional brief calls. Jerry, thank God you answered. Mom's voice was breathless with panic. I'm at Memorial Hospital. You need to come right away. My heart dropped. Despite everything, the thought of Mom seriously ill or injured was terrifying. What happened? Are you okay? I asked, already signaling to Allison that we needed to delay our departure. Just come now. Emergency room entrance. Hurry! She hung up abruptly. I explained the situation to Allison, who immediately offered to drive me to the hospital. The 20-minute drive felt interminable, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Had she fallen? Heart attack? Stroke? We rushed into the emergency room, only to find Mom sitting comfortably in the waiting area, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as we approached, showing no signs of distress or injury. Finally, she said, gathering her purse, I've been waiting forever. What's wrong? Why are you in the emergency room? I asked, confusion replacing concern. Oh, I'm fine, she waved dismissively. I had a bit of a headache earlier and came to get it checked, but I'm all better now. I just need a ride to Bella Salon. I've got a 3 o'clock appointment for highlights, and my car wouldn't start this morning. The realization hit me like a physical blow. There was no emergency. She had fabricated a medical crisis to manipulate me into driving her to a hair appointment. You called me, claiming to be in the hospital, making me think something terrible had happened. For a ride to get your hair done? My voice was barely controlled. Mom looked annoyed at my tone. Well, it is your birthday. I wanted to look nice for dinner tonight. I've made reservations at Giovanni's for 7. Natalie and Ryan are coming too. I stared at her, speechless. She'd not only created a false emergency, but had also made dinner plans on my birthday without consulting me, effectively sabotaging the weekend getaway that had been planned for months. We have plans for this weekend, I said, gesturing to Allison, who stood silently beside me. I told you last week about our trip to Maine. Mom's expression hardened. Family comes first, Jerry. I'm sure Allison understands that. You can go to Maine anytime. Something inside me snapped. Years of suppressed frustration, resentment, and hurt came flooding out as we stood in the hospital parking lot. No, Mom, you don't get to do this anymore. You don't get to lie to me, manipulate me, and control my life. I've spent years trying to be the perfect son, paying your bills, solving your problems, funding your lifestyle, and it's never enough. Mom's face flushed with anger. After everything I've done for you, I raised you single-handedly after your father died. I sacrificed everything for you and your sister. Dad died when I was 16, and I've been supporting this family financially since I was 22, I countered. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every vacation, all paid for by me. Where exactly is your sacrifice in that equation? Is that all we are to you? A financial burden? Mom's voice rose, attracting glances from people entering the hospital. Maybe Natalie's right about you. Maybe you do care more about money than family. This isn't about money, I said, struggling to maintain my composure. It's about respect. It's about honesty. It's about treating me like a person with my own life, not just a checkbook you can tap whenever you want. How dare you speak to me that way, after I gave you life? Mom's voice had reached a shrill pitch. You gave me life, yes, but I've given you everything else. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm going to Maine with Allison. We've been planning this for months, and I deserve to celebrate my birthday the way I choose. At that moment, Natalie's silver Audi, the one I had helped her finance, pulled into the parking lot. She got out, striding toward us with a scowl. What's going on? Mom, why are you still here? Your appointment is in 20 minutes. She barely acknowledged Allison and me. Mom immediately launched into her version of events, painting me as ungrateful and selfish. Natalie turned on me, eyes flashing. Seriously, Jerry? It's just a weekend. Why do you always have to make everything so difficult? Just take Mom to her appointment, and then we can all have a nice birthday dinner like a normal family. There's nothing normal about lying about being in the hospital to get a ride, Allison interjected quietly. Natalie rounded on her. Stay out of this. This is a family matter. Allison is the family I choose, I said firmly, taking her hand. And she's right. There's nothing normal about any of this. The argument escalated, with Mom and Natalie forming a united front of indignation and accusations. Every attempt at reason was met with escalating emotional manipulation. Fine, I finally said, exhaustion washing over me. I'm done. I'm going to Maine. I've earned this weekend, and I'm taking it. You two figure out the salon situation yourselves. Walking away from them, hearing Mom's angry calls and Natalie's cutting remarks, was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. But with each step toward the car, Allison's hand steady in mine, I felt something unexpected, relief. We drove back to my apartment in silence, both processing what had just happened. When we arrived, Allison touched my arm gently. I'm going to give you some space, she said softly. This is a lot to process, and you should take some time to think about what you want moving forward. I wanted to protest, to beg her to stay, but I recognized the wisdom in her words. We weren't breaking up, she made that clear, but she was giving me room to make decisions without influence. After she left, I sat alone in my apartment, the weekend bag still packed by the door, and let the full weight of the situation settle over me. For the first time, I had stood up to my family's manipulation in a meaningful way, and it felt both terrible and liberating. The weekend passed in a blur of missed calls, angry texts, and social media posts from Natalie about selfish siblings who abandoned their families. I turned off notifications and sat with my discomfort, allowing myself to feel the guilt without acting on it. By Monday, I was exhausted emotionally and physically. I called in sick to work for the first time in years, unable to face the day. James, my boss, called personally to check on me. Take the week if you need it, he offered, after hearing the bare bones of the situation. Family stuff can be harder than any technical problem we deal with here. I made an emergency appointment with Dr. Keller, a therapist Allison had recommended months ago. In his calm office, with its soft lighting and comfortable chairs, I poured out years of suppressed feelings. What you're describing is a classic pattern of financial abuse and emotional manipulation, Dr. Keller explained. Your role in the family became defined by what you could provide, not who you are. But they're my family, I said. The justification automatic after all these years. Yes, they are. And healthy families support each other mutually, respect boundaries, and want the best for each member, not just what benefits them. Over the next few sessions, Dr. Keller helped me see clearly what my relationship with my mother and sister had become, and more importantly, what it could be with proper boundaries. I drafted a lengthy email to Mom and Natalie, outlining my feelings and establishing clear financial boundaries moving forward. I would continue to help with true emergencies, but the days of unlimited financial support were over. I didn't receive a response for nearly a week. The silence was unusual and unsettling. Then, Scrolling through Instagram one evening, I saw Natalie had posted photos of a family dinner at Mom's house. Aunt Susan was there, along with cousins I hadn't seen in months. The caption read, "Family time with the people who truly matter. Blessed family." I had not been invited or even informed about the gathering. The exclusion was deliberate and calculated to hurt. I sent a simple text to Mom. "I see there was a family dinner last night. Was I not included intentionally?" The response came 3 hours later, a message that would change everything. "We've agreed you're no longer part of the family. Don't come to any gatherings." Natalie had liked the message, within seconds of it being sent. I stared at my phone screen, reading and rereading the message until the words blurred. "We've agreed you're no longer part of the family. Don't come to any gatherings." Simple, direct, devastating. The notification showed Natalie had liked the message, a digital twist of the knife. My first instinct was to call Mom, to demand an explanation or attempt reconciliation. But as I sat in my darkened living room, something shifted inside me. This message, so cold, so final, was actually clarifying. For years I'd been treated as an ATM, not a son or brother. Now they were just being honest about it. I took a screenshot of the message, and Natalie's like, "Then set my phone aside." The apartment felt too quiet, too empty for the magnitude of what had just happened. I needed someone who understood. I called Allison. Her voice was sleepy when she answered. It was past 11, but she woke up immediately when I told her what had happened. "I'm coming over," she said without hesitation. "Don't respond to them until I get there." 20 minutes later, she was at my door. Still in the yoga pants and oversized sweater she'd been sleeping in, her hair hastily pulled back. She wrapped her arms around me without a word, and in that embrace, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of my family's rejection. When I showed her the message, Allison's expression shifted from sympathy to controlled anger. "They think this is their power move," she said, her voice steady. "They think you'll panic at the thought of losing them and come crawling back with your checkbook open." "Part of me wants to," I admitted. "They're still my family, despite everything." Allison took my hand. "Being family isn't just about DNA, Jerry. It's about how people treat you. It's about mutual respect and support. Ask yourself, if these weren't your mother and sister, would you tolerate this behavior from anyone else in your life?" The question hung in the air between us. The answer was obvious. "No," I said finally, "I wouldn't." "Then don't give them special permission to treat you badly just because they're family." Allison's eyes were intense, her conviction absolute. "You deserve better, and it's time they learned there are consequences for their actions." For nearly an hour, we talked through options. I could ignore the message entirely, leaving them to wonder. I could respond with hurt or anger, letting them know they'd succeeded in causing pain. Or I could accept their terms but with stipulations of my own. "They think cutting you off emotionally is their leverage," Allison pointed out. "But they're forgetting who has the actual power in this relationship." A strange calm settled over me as clarity emerged. For years I'd given them financial support in exchange for emotional crumbs. If they were officially withdrawing even those crumbs, what obligation did I have to continue my side of this unbalanced equation? I composed my response carefully. "Thanks for confirming. I'll cancel all the auto payments." Simple, factual, final. Allison read it over my shoulder. "Are you sure about this? It's a big step." I nodded, feeling more certain than I had in years. They've made their choice. Now I'm making mine. I hit send, then immediately opened my banking app. One by one, I methodically canceled every automatic payment I'd set up for my mother and sister. The mortgage payment for Mom's house. Canceled. Utilities, electricity, water, internet, cable, all canceled. Car payments for both Mom's sedan and Natalie's Audi. Canceled. Insurance payments for both vehicles. Canceled. The credit card I paid off monthly for Mom. Canceled. Natalie's student loan payments I'd been covering. Canceled. The family cell phone plan under my name. Service reduction notice submitted. Various subscription services, streaming platforms, meal kit deliveries, wine club memberships, all canceled. With each cancellation, I felt a strange mixture of guilt and liberation. These payments had been automatic for so long, both financially and psychologically, that stopping them felt almost transgressive. But alongside the guilt was a growing sense of reclaiming something essential: my autonomy. They've been taking advantage of your generous nature for years, Allison said as I finished the final cancellation. This isn't about punishment. It's about establishing healthy boundaries. I nodded, trying to believe it. It still feels wrong somehow. That's the conditioning talking, she replied gently. You've been trained to put their needs above your own for so long that taking care of yourself feels selfish. It's not. We sat together on the couch, the reality of what I'd done slowly sinking in. My phone remained silent for now, but we both knew it wouldn't last. At 11:45 p.m., the first call came through. Mom's name flashed on the screen. "Do you want to answer it?" Allison asked. I shook my head and sent the call to voicemail. A notification appeared moments later. "Jerry, what have you done? The bank called about the mortgage payment. Call me back immediately." 3 more calls followed in quick succession, each sent to voicemail. Each message grew increasingly frantic. "This is childish and irresponsible. Turn the payments back on right now. I'm your mother. You can't just cut me off like this. If you don't fix this by morning, you'll regret it." At 11:52 p.m., Natalie joined the barrage. "What the actual hell, Jerry?" Mom's crying her eyes out. "You know she can't afford the mortgage on her own. Is this about that stupid text?" She was just upset. "Ryan says what you're doing might be financial abuse. We could report you." That last one made me laugh despite everything. The irony of being accused of financial abuse after years of being financially abused was almost too perfect. More calls, more texts, more voicemails, each escalating in urgency and accusation. Through it all, I sat with Allison, allowing the storm to rage around me without engaging. "They're panicking," Allison observed as midnight approached. "They never thought you'd actually stand up for yourself." "What happens now?" I asked, feeling strangely calm amid the digital chaos. "Now you hold your ground," she said firmly. "They've shown you who they are. Believe them." As the clock struck midnight, I felt simultaneously exhausted and awake. Something fundamental had shifted, and there would be no going back to the way things were before. For better or worse, I had finally drawn a line. The phone calls continued relentlessly as midnight passed. Mom's name flashed on my screen every few minutes, interspersed with calls from Natalie and even Ryan. I silenced the ringer but couldn't help watching the notifications accumulate. "You should try to get some sleep," Allison suggested, concern evident in her voice. "Tomorrow's going to be challenging enough without exhaustion." I nodded, but knew sleep would be impossible. Too much adrenaline coursed through my system. Too many thoughts raced through my mind. What would happen to Mom's house? Would Natalie have to drop out of her master's program? Was I being cruel? At 12:10 a.m. precisely, my building's security desk called. "Mr. Thompson, there's a Margaret Thompson here insisting on seeing you. She seems quite upset. Should I send her up?" Mom had driven across town in the middle of the night, likely still in her pajamas underneath her coat, to confront me in person. The desperation of the move wasn't lost on me. "No, please don't send her up," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'm not available to visitors right now." "She's saying it's a family emergency, sir." "It's not," I said firmly. "Please ask her to leave. If she refuses, you have my permission to call for assistance." I could hear commotion in the background, Mom's voice rising, demanding to be led upstairs. The security guard's polite but firm responses. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "Mom's at your building. Let her up, you coward." Allison squeezed my hand supportively as we listened to the chaos unfolding through the phone. The security guard returned to the line. "Sir, she's becoming disruptive. I may need to call the police if she doesn't calm down." "I understand. Do what you need to do. I'm sorry for the trouble." Minutes later, my phone rang again, the building's front desk. "Security footage shows your mother has left the premises, sir. She was quite upset but departed when I mentioned police involvement." "Thank you. I appreciate your handling of the situation." As if on cue, my phone lit up with a call from Mom. This time, curiosity got the better of me, and I answered on speaker so Allison could hear. "How dare you have security threaten me with the police?" Mom's voice was shrill with indignation. "I raised you better than this." "It's after midnight, Mom. This isn't an appropriate time for a visit." "Don't you after midnight me. You've canceled everything, every single payment. What am I supposed to do?" "Figure it out," I replied, surprising myself with my calmness. "Just like you figured out I was no longer part of the family. That was just a text, Jerry. People say things when they're angry. Her voice shifted from outrage to pleading. You can't take that seriously. I took it exactly as seriously as you meant it when you sent it. And when Natalie liked it seconds later, there was a pause, then Mom's voice returned, softer now, calculating. Honey, we've had a misunderstanding. Of course you're family. We were just upset about the dinner. Let's talk about this tomorrow when everyone's calmer. There's nothing to talk about. You made your position clear, and I've adjusted accordingly. If I'm not family enough to be included in gatherings, I'm certainly not family enough to pay your bills. You're being ridiculous. This is your mother and sister you're punishing. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm respecting your wishes and establishing boundaries of my own. The conversation devolved from there, with Mom cycling through various emotional tactics, guilt, anger, bargaining, threats that had worked so effectively in the past. But something had shifted fundamentally inside me. The spell was broken. After I ended the call, Natalie began her assault. Texts, calls, voicemails, all with increasing desperation disguised as righteous anger. Mom might lose her house because of you. Do you know what this stress could do to her health? Dad would be disgusted by what you've become. I blocked her number temporarily, needing respite from the barrage. Extended family members began calling next Aunt Susan, cousins, even my mother's friend Barbara. Each had heard a carefully curated version of events that cast me as the villain. Around 2 a.m., an email arrived from Mom. The subject line read, "Please read. Family emergency." The tone was dramatically different from her calls and texts, humble, apologetic, almost reverent. My dearest Jerry, I'm writing with the heaviest of hearts. Our family is in crisis, and only you can help us. The text I sent earlier was inexcusable, written in a moment of foolish anger that I regretted instantly. Of course, you are family, the most important part of our family. We love you more than words can express. Everything we've done has been out of love, though I see now how our actions might have seemed demanding or ungrateful. Nothing could be further from the truth. Please, for the sake of the family we once were and can be again, reconsider your decision about the financial arrangements. Without your support, I may lose my home, our family home where you grew up, where your father's memory lives on. I'm on my knees, begging for your forgiveness and help. With all my love and deepest regret, Mom. Allison read over my shoulder and raised an eyebrow. Quite the performance. She's good, I admitted. This would have worked a month ago. I composed a response, careful to be firm but not cruel. Mom, I've received your email and understand your concerns. However, my decision stands. For years, I've supported this family financially, without acknowledgement or appreciation. When that support became inconvenient to your social plans, you officially removed me from the family. I accept your decision, and am adjusting my financial commitments accordingly. The mortgage, utilities, and other expenses are now your responsibility, just as they would be for any adult. This isn't about punishment. It's about respect and boundaries. I deserve both. Jerry. I hesitated before hitting send, then added a final paragraph. I'm copying the extended family on this reply so they understand the full context of our situation, including the years of financial support I've provided and the text message officially removing me from the family. I attached screenshots of Mom's original text, Natalie's like, and bank statements showing years of payments to their accounts, then hit send to the expanded list of relatives who had been contacting me. The response was immediate and unexpected. Within minutes, I received a text from Uncle Robert. Always knew something wasn't right with how they treated you. Your father would be proud of you standing up for yourself. Call me tomorrow if you want to talk. Aunt Elizabeth, Mom's youngest sister, who had always been somewhat of an outsider herself, emailed. Jerry, I had no idea about any of this. Margaret told us you'd cut them off without warning because you were angry about something trivial. I'm sorry for believing her without hearing your side. What she and Natalie did was wrong. The most surprising contact came from Ryan, Natalie's husband, who sent a private message. Man, I can't say this publicly, but I get it. I've seen how they treat you, always expecting more while giving nothing back. Natalie's freaking out right now, but maybe this is the wake-up call they both need. I'm trying to talk sense into her, but you know how she is when she gets something in her head. As dawn approached, Mom's carefully constructed narrative began crumbling. Family members who had initially called to berate me now reached out with apologies and support. Several admitted they'd wondered about the disparity between my modest lifestyle and Mom and Natalie's increasingly lavish one. Mom's response was to launch a social media campaign, painting herself as an abandoned mother betrayed by her ungrateful son. She posted tearful selfies with captions about family loyalty and a mother's unconditional love. The strategy backfired spectacularly. Comments from extended family and mutual friends were unexpectedly supportive of me. "Margaret, Jerry has supported you financially for years. Perhaps it's time to show some gratitude instead of publicly shaming him. Natalie, weren't you just posting vacation photos from that resort in Cabo? Maybe it's time to get a job instead of relying on your brother." By morning, what had begun as Mom's attempt to mobilize social pressure against me had transformed into a public reckoning. The carefully crafted image of our family-dedicated mother, successful daughter, distant son was unraveling in real time. I took the day off work, knowing I needed space to process everything. Allison stayed as long as she could before heading to her practice, promising to return that evening. "You've done the hardest part," she told me as she left. "Now comes the healing." In the quiet of my apartment, I felt an unfamiliar lightness. The financial burden I'd carried for so long had been crushing, but even heavier was the emotional weight of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. That evening, I had dinner with Uncle Robert, my father's brother, whom I'd always been close to but had seen less frequently in recent years. Over steaks at his favorite restaurant, he shared perspectives that helped me understand the broader family context. "Your father would be heartbroken to see what Margaret has become," he said candidly. He always worried about her spending habits and emphasis on appearances, but he never imagined she'd exploit their own son. "Did Dad know this would happen?" I asked, pushing food around my plate. Uncle Robert considered the question. "Not specifically. But he made me promise to keep an eye on you if anything happened to him." I failed in that promise, Jerry. I saw signs of what was happening but didn't intervene. "That's on me. It's on all of us," I replied. I could have set boundaries years ago. As we parted, Uncle Robert embraced me warmly. "You're welcome at our family gatherings anytime. Barbara and I would love to have you and Allison for Thanksgiving." It was the first family invitation I'd received that didn't come with an unspoken price tag, and it meant more than I could express. 6 months passed, bringing changes I could never have anticipated that night when Mom's text arrived, disowning me from the family. The immediate chaos eventually settled into a new normal, one built on boundaries and mutual respect rather than financial obligation and guilt. The most significant change was in my relationship with Allison. Her unwavering support through the family crisis had deepened our connection in profound ways. On a crisp fall evening, as we walked through Boston Common surrounded by autumn leaves, I asked her to marry me. Her joyful acceptance marked the beginning of a new chapter, a family we would build together on healthier foundations than the one I'd been born into. Financially, the difference was immediate and substantial. Without supporting Mom and Natalie, my monthly expenses decreased by nearly 60%. For the first time, I was able to fully fund my retirement accounts, create a robust emergency fund, and allocate money toward experiences rather than obligations. Allison and I took our first international trip together, 2 weeks in Portugal, that would have been unthinkable when I was paying multiple mortgages and car payments. We began house hunting, looking for a place that could become our home, perhaps eventually filled with children raised to understand the difference between generosity and exploitation. Weekly sessions with Dr. Keller continued, helping me process the complex emotions of family estrangement. The guilt diminished gradually, replaced by understanding that healthy relationships require reciprocity. I learned to recognize manipulative tactics and respond with boundaries rather than compliance. "You're not responsible for your mother's financial choices," Dr. Keller reminded me during one particularly difficult session after Mom's house went into pre-foreclosure. "She's an adult with options: downsizing, getting a job, seeking government assistance. You gave her years of support. What she does now is her decision." Contact with Mom and Natalie became limited and structured. After the initial financial shock, Mom found a part-time job at a local department store and moved into a smaller apartment. Natalie and Ryan had to dramatically scale back their lifestyle, with Natalie reluctantly taking a position at an insurance company rather than the fashion industry job she'd been holding out for. Their initial fury eventually gave way to grudging acknowledgement of the new reality. Mom occasionally sent messages attempting to re-establish the old dynamic, hints about financial struggles or thinly veiled requests for loans. Each time, I responded with consistent boundaries. I'm glad to hear from you, Mom. I'm not in a position to provide financial assistance, but I'm happy to help you create a budget if you'd like. The consistency was key. No exceptions, no one-time bailouts that would reset the cycle of dependency. It wasn't easy hearing about Mom's struggles triggered deeply ingrained protective instincts, but necessary for both our sakes. An unexpected development was the support network that emerged around me. Through a recommendation from Dr. Keller, I joined a group for adult children of emotionally immature parents. Meeting others with similar experiences was validating and healing. Some had maintained relationships with difficult parents. Others had chosen complete separation. All understood the complicated grief of mourning a relationship that never was while processing the loss of what might have been. I began mentoring younger colleagues at work who came from similar backgrounds, first-generation professionals, supporting extended families while trying to build their own financial security. Over coffee or lunch, I shared hard-earned wisdom about setting boundaries without severing ties, being generous without being exploited. This informal mentoring evolved into a small nonprofit initiative, Financial Boundaries Project. With support from James and other colleagues at Tech Future, we developed resources for individuals navigating family financial pressures, particularly those from cultural backgrounds where such support was deeply expected. My physical and mental health improved noticeably. The constant stress headaches disappeared. I slept through the night without anxiety about whether I was doing enough for my family. Blood pressure readings that had concerned my doctor for years returned to normal levels. Allison commented that I smiled more, laughed more freely, stood straighter. Thanksgiving, the first major holiday after the estrangement, brought an unexpected opportunity for reconciliation. Mom reached out with an invitation to dinner, promising a fresh start. Against Allison's gentle skepticism, I agreed, hopeful that time and consequences had created space for change. The hope was short-lived. Within minutes of arriving at Mom's new apartment, the old patterns emerged. Comments about the modesty of her living situation. Pointed questions about my extra money now that I wasn't helping family. Natalie's passive-aggressive remarks about having to work menial jobs while I enjoyed luxury. I left after 45 minutes, sad but resolute. Some relationships couldn't be salvaged, at least not without fundamental changes the other person wasn't willing to make. Instead, Allison and I joined Uncle Robert and Aunt Barbara for their Thanksgiving dinner. Surrounded by relatives who expected nothing from me but my presence, I experienced family as it should be: supportive, loving, mutually respectful. As winter turned to spring and spring to summer, the lessons crystallized into wisdom I carried forward. Self-worth isn't measured by financial provision. Giving until it hurts isn't noble. It's unsustainable. Real family, whether biological or chosen, supports growth rather than exploiting success. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for healthy relationships. Most importantly, I learned that family is defined by love expressed through actions, not by DNA or obligation. The text that had devastated me, "We've agreed you're no longer part of the family," had inadvertently freed me to discover what family truly meant. Allison and I created new traditions with our chosen family weekend brunches, with friends who celebrated our successes without envy, holidays with relatives who understood reciprocity, game nights with colleagues who became friends. These relationships, built on mutual respect and genuine affection, filled the space once occupied by obligation and manipulation. Mom and Natalie continued their lives, adapting to financial independence with varying degrees of success and resentment. I maintained my boundaries while leaving the door cracked open for a healthier relationship should they ever choose to walk through it. The journey from financial enabler to self-respect wasn't linear or simple. There were moments of doubt, pangs of guilt, and occasional backsliding. But with each passing month, the new patterns strengthened while the old ones faded. The text that was meant to destroy me ended up setting me free. Sometimes losing what you thought was family makes room for the real thing to find you. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? How did you balance caring for family with caring for yourself? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength through life's challenges. Remember, Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest healing. Thank you for listening. And until next time, take care of yourself because you deserve the same consideration you give to others.